Do pivot tables sound confusing or worse, even scary? That's right, I was there too. In this video, we'll go from zero knowledge to complete confidence. I'm going to show you how to create pivot tables in Excel, and even if you've never made one before, by the end of this video, you'll be looking like a pro. We will go from a plain data set to this great looking pivot table in no time. We will cover how to create a pivot table formatting, and how to analyze data from a pivot table. So stick around because this skill will have you look like a pro in Excel. And with that said, let's go ahead and dive in. In our example data set here, we have a Q2 sales report highlighting all the different sorts of Apple products that have been sold, the region that they were sold in, the date that they were sold, the sales rep, and the total sales amount. And we can see we have about 100 lines of data here, and it's kind of hard to read this, right? We can't really tell who sold what, how much they sold, what region they sold in, nor what the date was that they sold it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this data and turn it into a pivot table. The first thing to notice is that it's very important to have headers for your pivot table. If we were to create this pivot table and we didn't have any sort of header, Excel wouldn't know how to categorize this data. So it's very important, first of all, that we have headers. An optional item that we can do is create this data into a table. So we're going to press Shift, Control, over, Shift, Control, down, select our full data set, press Control T, or you can go to Insert, Table, and we'll select our full data. All right, and now we have a beautiful looking table, and now we're going to turn this into a pivot table by using the same steps, Control Shift right, Control Shift down, and we can go to Insert, and we see a pivot table right here. Alternatively, you can press Alt N V, and we'll select pivot table, and then we're going to select T again from a table and range, and we're going to make a pivot table out of this, out of our selected table. And we're going to select new worksheet. You can also select existing worksheet if you so chose, or a different location, but we're going to put this into a new worksheet. All right, so that brought us to a new tab. First thing we're going to do is click down here and rename our sheet. We can either double click in the sheet and that will highlight the data, or you can press Alt, H, O, and R to rename a sheet. And then we're going to type in pivot table, so that way we know what sheet we're on and what we're working with. All right, so now that we have our sheet named, what we're going to do is we're going to click into our pivot table, and we can see that our pivot table field generator pops up. What's cool about this is you can actually move this around. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, whatever you so choose. So in our pivot table fields, we see that we have a couple different options. We have all of our headers from our previous sheet, and this will contain all the associated data with those columns. And then down below, we have filters, columns, rows, and values. Each one of these quadrants are going to be a different portion of the pivot table, and we'll show you what that looks like here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select date into our columns. We're going to select product into our rows, and then we're going to select amount into the values. So very quickly, we can see we have our dates as our header, we have our products in the left-hand column, and then we have all the values associated with the sales in each month with that associated product. So as you can see, this is very easy to look at, very easy to digest and read versus the previous table that we looked at. And we can kind of tell like it's a little bit hard to read. So what we're going to do here is we're going to right click. We're going to select number format. We're going to select number, get rid of our decimals, and use 1000 separator. And we see it gets a little bit more cleaned up. That way we can easily take a look at what the product sales were in which month. In addition to that, we can also add multiple filters as well. So let's say we want to take a look at a specific region for their sales, and we want to filter on one specific region, or we can select multiple at the same time. So let's say we want to see the East region sales. We can filter on East, and then we see all the associated sales by product by month for the East region. And what's really cool is we can go into, let's say we want to get a little bit more further detail in April for the Apple Watch. We can double click our value right here, and this will actually create a new sheet down at the bottom with the underlining and supporting detail. This doesn't ruin the pivot table. This exports it out to a new sheet, and this is very handy if you're in a presentation and a leader asks for more information regarding a specific set of sales. You can always filter that out, or if you need to provide further detail for any sort of analysis or support, it's very quick to click on that and get the underlying detail. So we'll go ahead and delete this sheet because we don't need it. And now bring us back to our main pivot table. So now that we have our pivot table put together, we have a little bit of format to it, we're going to take it up a notch. So we're going to click on the design tab right here, and we have a couple different options. We can change the color of our pivot table. We see there's all sorts of different options. Some are a little bit better than others. So let's go ahead and select, I like this light green color right here. We also have a little bit of formatting options with our grand totals and how our pivot table looks. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to grand totals, and then we're going to turn off for rows and columns. And we can see that it kind of cleans up a little bit, but it's still kind of hard to tell what the total sales were for each product and for which month. So I want to show the grand total for each product. So I'm going to go for on for rows only. And this will give us the summation of each month for the specific product that we selected. And grand totals are pretty cool because we don't have to go in there and calculate anything. Turn on grand totals, it does the calculation for us. Excel does all the heavy lifting. We don't have to go in there and do a function or equation. We can just toggle that grand total off or on as we see fit, and we'll see the grand total for all of our items here. So up next, I'm going to show you how to do a calculated field within a pivot table. This is extremely powerful because you can actually do a calculation inside the pivot table. So what I did here is I reordered our pivot table to show each sales rep and their associated total sales. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to Field Items and Sets and press Calculated Field. And this will bring up a calculated field that we can go in and make an equation. So we're going to select Amount and Insert Field. And then we're going to multiply that by 20% or 0.2 for a 20% commission. Go ahead and press OK. And now we see here we have a sum of field 2, or our commission, which is going to be 20% of each of these amounts. This is a very powerful tool to be able to go in and do an equation inside a pivot table. And if we want to take it a step further, what we can do is go to Pivot Table Analyzed in the ribbon and go ahead and select Insert Timeline. We're going to select Date. Press OK. I'll bring this over here. And now we can select years, quarters, months, days, however granular you want to get. We can select a specific month and see the associated sales and commission for each salesperson. So a timeline is also a really powerful tool to associate with the pivot table because you can select your certain parameters and scale it up as you need to. So for this instance, we're looking at quarter 2. We see our full amount and the associated commission. We can also look at May specifically, or if we go to July, we don't have anything because we didn't have any data associated with it. And now if we want to take it a step further than that, we can go back to Pivot Table Analyze, go to Insert Slicer, and we can enter in a custom filter for whatever data set we want to. So let's go ahead and say we want to look at region. We'll press OK. And now we have our timeline and a slicer with each region where we can press East and we get the sales amount and commission for each sales rep in the East region. So this gives you a lot of power to slice and dice the data however you want. As an example, if we went to our table here, we kind of have to click in, let's say East, and then we see all of our items. It's kind of hard to read, whereas in our pivot table, it's very clear what we're looking at, what the parameters are, and what the totals are by each person. So using a pivot table to analyze data is an incredible way to take your data analysis to the next level. The last thing I'm going to show you today is how to make a chart out of our pivot table. So if we go ahead and click into our pivot table, we see the Pivot Table Analyze tab show up on our ribbon, and there we see Pivot Chart. We'll go ahead and select that. And then we see a full chart list of all the different charts that we can make based on our data in our pivot table. And what's really cool is if you hover over the graphic, it enlarges it for you. So that way you can see a little preview of what your chart might look like before you select it. And that gives you a good indication of, is this going to show off our data in the best possible way? Or do we need to look at a different type of chart to present our data in a very clear fashion? So what we're going to select is we're going to select column, and we're going to select this clustered column chart right here. It's going to give us a very clean look of what our total sales and total commissions are. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make it a little bit bigger. So what you can do is you can actually go in and select the bar specifically, and you can format the data. And we're going to select, let's chunk these up a little bit, make them look a little bit nicer. And then we're going to tighten them up so that way they're associated with the sales and commission of each sales rep. All right, so now that our data bars are buttoned up and tight against one another, we're going to select one of our data bars here, and we're going to select Add Data Labels, Add Data Label, and now we can see the corresponding amount with each one of our total sales by person. To clean this up a little bit, we're going to right-click into those data labels, and we're going to select Format Data Labels, and we have all sorts of different options here. We're going to go down to number, and we're going to change it from general into currency, so that way we can see the numerical amount. We're going to get rid of this so we don't have any decimal places. All right, so now we have a great looking pivot chart, and what we can do inside this pivot chart is we can also filter based on any specific data that we want to see. So if we want to see a specific salesperson or a group of salespeople and their corresponding sales and commission, we can go ahead and do that. We have a custom looking filter in our pivot chart, and that we can filter on whatever kind of data that we want to. So super powerful tool. And this is also really handy if we need to put this into a presentation, or if we need to send this out on any sort of deck or to any of our leaders. We now have that ability. All right, everyone, that does it for today's video. If you like what you saw, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to leave a comment on what you want to see in the future. We should have videos coming out at least once, if not twice a week, and we'll catch you on the next one.